Where did I get my Necron dice from? I answer this and more in this month's special Necron Q&A. It's coming right up.
Necrons!
Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. And if you're new to the channel and you want to keep up to date with the Wonders of Warhammer 40k, then please subscribe and hit the bell button to turn on all notifications so you don't miss an upload. Right, today is a very special Necron dedicated Q&A episode, and the reason why I'm doing this dedicated video is because on my last Q&A video I had about 50% of the questions as Necron questions. So I'm going to split this month's Q&A into this episode, pure Necron questions, and then another episode answering all of the other questions, which will be going up on Thursday this week. Right, before we get started, I've got a question for you. So we now know that the Space Marines are getting new chapter tactics, and I'm very interested to hear what you think about them and how are they going to affect our Necrons. Let me know in the comments box below, and of course whilst you're there don't forget to ask me a question for next month's Q&A. Right, let's have a look at the first question. Okay, so the first question is from Raceman TV, and he says, how many Scarabs should I have in my army? I'm thinking 6, but it could be too many points. I'm a starter, by the way. So, great question. And of course you get Scarabs, the models, in with the warrior box. So 2 warrior boxes is going to give you those 6 Scarabs, which is probably what you've got. Now, how many in an army? This is not a tough one, but this can vary depending on your list, really. First of all, Scarabs aren't not worth the points. In actual fact, Scarabs usually make it into most of my lists, and the reason for that is they're great for various things in an army. So they're great for taking objectives. In actual fact, a small unit of 3 or so, you can just hide at the bottom of a building on an objective, and you know they can be quite difficult to move. So small units of Scarabs definitely work, but also larger units of Scarabs are great for screening your shooty units that you don't want to get into assault. Put those Scarabs in front of them to stop that first turn assault if you're playing an assaulty army. So they're great for that, and they're also great for taking the mortal wounds from maybe some psychic powers like Smite, for example. So again, you just put them up front. Now Scarabs will usually just die, and they'll die quite quickly, and okay, you could argue that the 13 points per base is quite expensive for a unit that's just going to die. However, they do really help the rest of the army. As I said, if you're taking mortal wounds on those Scarabs, so bearing in mind they've got the 3 wounds that need to be taken before the base disappears. Well, that could be 3 immortals going from Smite, so it's definitely well worthwhile. I personally like to use bigger units. I play my Scarabs a little bit more offensively rather than defensively, so I don't tend to take small units and put them on objectives. I usually have the bigger units, and I do a lot more with them, either be more attacking or, like I said, just use them for bubble wrapping, etc. So when I'm making my list, I usually start with the biggest squad possible, 9, and then as my list develops they tend to shrink down, but I prefer to use at least 5 or 6, ideally 7, 8. Like I said, I prefer the bigger squads, really. That's just me, but to be fair, any squad size of Scarabs is worth having because they are really good, very universal. So thanks for the question. Right, let's have a look at the next one. So the next question is from Capatan Morgan's Wargames, and he says, your top 3 Necron units. Thank you, Richard. This is a good one. I've made a lot of top 5 lists before, but they've been more about the actual models. Now I think Richard is talking about from the rules point of view here. So Personally, my top 5 units would be Destroyers, not top 5, top 3. Destroyers, I think Destroyers are awesome, especially with just a 1-point stratagem. They've got the fly special rule, and okay, their guns are only 24 inches, but we've got options. You could Veil of Darkness them closer if you want to. How they just move quite fast, so you can actually get your guns in range reasonably well. And you know, 3 wounds with the RP, so they can stand back up to get all their wounds back, which is pretty awesome and a great use of RP. So Destroyers definitely would be up there. It's difficult not to say Doomsday Arcs and Doom Scythes because those are pretty good units. I don't necessarily think they're my favourite unit. I'm going to say Tesla Immortals, when buffed up with all the various buffs, they are very devastating at that 24-inch range. So I'm going to say Destroyers and Immortals. And I know everyone's screaming at the camera, Tomb Blades. Because I'm playing against Orcs at the moment, and they have the Looters with that special stratagem where they explode on 5s and 6s, and they ignore modifiers, so there's no -1. And then the Looters do 2 damage, and Tomb Blades have 2 wounds. My Tomb Blades aren't performing very well, so I'm not sort of digging Tomb Blades too much at the moment. So I'm not really going to put them there. So I'm going to head towards a HQ, and I'm going to say the Cryptic. And I'm going to say the Cloaked Cryptic because he's a great complement. He's a great complementary unit to the Destroyers, especially give him the Veil of Darkness. And the Destroyers getting up with the 4+ RP. It's pretty awesome. So there are my top 3 units. Thank you, Richard. Capatan Morgan's Wargames, linked in the description below, along with everyone else who's asked me a question. So check them all out. Right, the next question is from Charles Carper. He says, do you think that the Warriors would be a more viable option if they had a 1 to 2 point increase, but had a dedicated melee weapon like they do in Apocalypse? Okay, that's a great question. I've not seen the Apocalypse rules, so I don't really know what they've got. But my instant answer is probably no. I don't think they'd be more viable. And I don't think they should really have a melee weapon because, well, Warriors have never had a melee weapon. They're a shooty troops unit. And I don't think... I think they should stay a troops unit, a shooter unit. But I think they need another points reduction, or their gun just needs to be better. But I think Games Workshop really are pushing for Immortals as your go-to troops choice. So at the moment, GW are not concentrating on Warriors. My guess is that their Warrior supply of models, which bearing in mind is a very old kit, is probably quite low on stock, and they probably just don't really want to make too many more. They probably run out of green gauze, bits of plastic, so I think they're not really pushing them. And I think that Warriors will come back and they'll be awesome again when GW make a new Warrior kit. And I have a funny feeling the next release of new models for Games Workshop for Necrons will be Warriors. I think we'll have a new Warrior kit without green rods, and hopefully the Scarab Swarms in a separate box where you can just buy Scarab Swarms. I think in an ideal world, Scarab Swarms should be like Ripper Swarms in Tyranids, where you get a few bases on each sprue or each model set that you buy. But of course, most of the sets, especially the new sets, are already done, so I don't think they'll do that. So hopefully we'll see a box of Scarabs. That'd be pretty cool. So that's my answer. Great question, thank you. Okay, so next we have a question from Lee Brown 353. He says, is there any area of the Necron army that you think needs a boost, i.e. any areas that may need a new unit, such as a close combat unit, heavy infantry, etc. I'd love a close combat dreadnought equivalent. So, of course, Necrons aren't really close combat orientated, but I'd have to go along with you there. I think our close combat could be better, because Necrons are already missing one big phase of the game, and that's of course the psychic phase. Not only are we missing it, but we don't have any defence against armies that have that phase, or at least very little effective defence. So I think it would be better if I think it would be a good idea if we did have better combat. I don't think we need another unit. I think we've got enough units that can do that. I think maybe flayed ones could be looked at. I'd like to see flayed ones cheaper in points, or have a better assault ability, not necessarily in attacks, etc., but I think what they would need is to almost guarantee you get those flayed ones into assaults once you deep strike then. So I'm thinking of roll 3d6 on the charge, or you can re-roll your charge, or you add 1 or add 2 to your charge range. Something which is going to make it not guaranteed, because nothing's guaranteed, is there, but something which makes it like a very high chance that you can deep strike in on turn 2 and assault something. And that would solve flayed one's issue even better if they were a bit cheaper in points. So I'm going to just put my hand up for flayed ones and just say, make flayed ones better. I don't think we need a new assault unit. Okay, great question though, Lee. Thank you for that. Okay, next question is from Mortis Deamonicus, and he says, do you think Necrons will ever get a knight equivalent unit? It would be great, wouldn't it, to have a big knight in sort of a Necron version. I don't think that will happen, to be honest, although I would like to see it. But I am hoping that we will get, I've said it quite a lot, but bigger Catans effectively. Make a Catan much bigger in size, magnicised, and make it, you know, the Necron big unit, a knight equivalent, I suppose. So yeah, I don't think we will actually get a knight, but I have my fingers crossed that we will get a big Catan model. Okay, so the next question is from Alexander Warren, and he says, what is your favourite Necron's weapon, or top 3 favourite Necron weapons from Necron's weapons history, if that makes sense? So yeah, that makes sense. My favourite Necron weapon is easy. That's the Warsaw. It's very iconic. I played the Necron Lord and Destroyer Lord for many years holding that Warsaw. It's an awesome weapon. It's not as good as it used to be when it used to ignore invulnerable saves, the heydays. We did go through a stage of the Mind Shackle Scarabs with that Warsaw coupled with Mind Shackle Scarabs. That was awesome. That was a lot of fun. The Warsaw is still pretty good. It could be better, but it's still pretty good. So that's my favourite weapon. And or top 3 favourite weapons from history. Okay, so yeah, I suppose Mind Shackle Scarabs, is that a weapon? Sort of a weapon, as an ability. That was something I really liked. And then some of the cryptic staffs that we had, they were quite flavourable and pretty useful as well. The one that, I think when you hit it, it made the unit that you hit move as if they were in cover, even if they were in the open. And that's when we had dangerous terrain checks, where models could die on a 1 if they moved through terrain, and you moved slower, like you had to roll dice to see how far you moved. So I'm going to say the cryptic staff, the Warsaw, and I'm not sure it classes as a weapon, but Mind Shackle Scarabs was a pretty awesome thing that Necrons had. Okay, so next we have a question from Michael Weidner, and he says, my question kind of ties into the one I asked a few Q&As ago. I've narrowed my super heavy choice down to the Gauze Pylon, or the Seraptic. I like the Pylon's ability to erase Titanic units off the board, whilst giving an invulnerable save to other Necron units. The Seraptic has great hand-to-hand ability and speed. I eventually will get both, but the cost of these things, I will only get one for now. Which would you choose and why? I use at least one unit of Destroyers, a Catan, 2 Doomsday Arcs, and in most of my lists. So I'd like to choose one to complement those type of units. Okay, so personally, hands down, I'd recommend the Seraptic. However, you are right in that the Pylon can do a lot of devastating damage. However, if you're up against armies that the Pylon doesn't really have much of a target, let's just say you're playing Orcs and there's not even a vehicle in sight, the Pylon really isn't going to do a great deal in points. And it's quite interesting that Forge World or Games Workshop have moved the points back down, because it's now the same points it was. Then they put the points up because everyone was using it, then they put the points down, and then people still haven't, so they put the points up and then less people used it. Now they put the points down. I'm finding that less people are still using it. And that's probably because the rest of the armies also come down in points, and we have a little bit more to play with the army. And of course now we've got things like 3 Doom Scythes and 3 Doomsday Arcs, which a lot of people are taking. So I think it depends on the environment that you're in. If you're up against lots of big stuff all the time, then a Pylon certainly could work. However, if you take the Seraptic with his big guns, then that certainly gives you the option. However, you mentioned close combat there, and it's true, really the Seraptic, the way I like to play him anyway, is with the generator guns, which has a good amount of shots, plus you have the option to do, or the ability to do mortal wounds with those shots, and to push him forward, get him into close combat, be a big distraction. He can do a reasonable amount in close combat, especially if you take the Novok Dynasty, and obviously you have the chance with the stratagem to hit twice, to assault twice, and of course if he explodes he could be quite nasty as well, so you do want to push him forward, ideally. Now I don't know, but I sense not so many people use the generator guns. I think that lots of people use the other guns, but unless you're up against toughness 9 stuff, I still would go for those generator guns. So I'm going to say the Seraptic, plus it's an awesome model. I mean, the Gauze Pylon is pretty cool, but it's fairly one-dimensional to build and paint, whereas the Seraptic is a lot more fun, and it's a lot of fun to play as well. Unlike the Pylon, which you just plonk down and that's it, the whole of the game, it basically just stays there and you're just shooting a few guns. The Seraptic's got a lot more to it. So my advice is go for the Seraptic. If you disagree, let me know, or let Michael know in the comments below. What do you think, Seraptic or Pylon? Right, the next question is from David Williamson, and he says, just started my Necron army and I'm considering getting one of everything from the Codex, maybe 2. Are there any units or data cards you think wouldn't be worth their value or are just rubbish, i.e. the Vault, Obelisk, Flyer? I would like a big 4k to 5k list eventually. Necrons. Okay, hello David, and welcome to Necrons and our awesome army. You are going to have a lot of fun. So, when I first started playing this wonderful hobby of ours, I was in the same mindset as you. I want one of everything from the Codex. In actual fact, that's pretty much what I collected, and that was fine. that was great. I was just having friendly games and had a lot of fun. However, what I'm finding is as you tend to get a little bit more competitive in your play, then you'll find you'll need duplicate units. So it depends where you're coming from, really. From a collection point of view, then go ahead, get one of everything. And I think we all know that GW change quite a lot. The rules change, models and units tend to go in and out of favour. So when you buy a unit, even if maybe it isn't that great at the moment, at some point it will be great. And sometimes it's fun just playing a unit which isn't that great and making it work on the table, which is what I've been doing recently with the Annihilation barges, which potentially aren't amazing at the moment. However, I've been using 2 in my list pretty successfully. So it really does depend. Of units to avoid, I mean, at this moment in time, I would say Praetorians. I personally wouldn't go for Praetorians, or at least go for them last. Probably, it's a hard one. It is hard, because if there's units you like the look of, then I'll just go for it. Just get them, and you'll still use them. And like I said, it depends on your environment. It sounds like you're just going to be having a lot of fun. So, okay, my advice is, yeah, go for it. Just get one of everything. And as you build your army, then look at getting duplicates. But you are going to want to get duplicates at some point. Like, for example, Doomsday Arc. You know, you're going to need at least 2 of those. So, yeah, definitely look to get duplicates. But the long and short is, if it's for a collection point of view, then one of each, awesome, why not? If you're looking to just have a competitive army, then you might want to consider just looking at the better units and duplicating them as much as possible. Okay, hopefully that's answered the question, and thank you for the question. Right, next we've got a question from Nicholas Mayne, and he says, "Hi Nick, Nick speaking. A few questions for you. I'm currently building a 2000 point Necron army. I want to include 2 units of 6 destroyers, but they cost a fortune, and they are very old minis. Have you heard on the Necron grapevine if they will be superseded by new, better looking models? And what is the likelihood of them being nerfed in a later codex?" Okay, there's something else coming up, but let's answer that. So, I've heard absolutely nothing about a new destroyer model. You are right, it is fairly old, but it's fairly awesome still as well. I love that model. Yeah, I've heard absolutely nothing. You are right, they are an expensive model, and in some countries pretty hard to get as well. Will they be nerfed? Quite possibly, and knowing GW, pretty much always. However, the destroyer is like the mainstay unit of a Necron army. It always has been, and it's always been pretty good. And whilst they've changed quite a bit over the years, from being jet bikes to jump infantry to fly infantry, you know, they've had quite a few different rules, and then the guns changed quite a bit. It was a 36-inch gun at strength 6 with 4 shots each, but then the AP wasn't as good, if I remember rightly. So they've had lots of changes, but they've always been pretty good. So, and I don't think GW will change that too much, to be honest. So yeah, I don't think they'll get too much of a nerf. Okay, you also say, will you be using your vast force in the new Apocalypse game? What are your thoughts on this, love? Oh, what are your thoughts on this? Love your channel. Thanks, Nick. Excellent, thank you. Glad you like the channel. Yeah, Apocalypse. This is quite interesting. So my usual answer for an Apocalypse question is no, I won't be playing it because I don't have the time to play it. And also I don't have a gaming group to play it. However, when I did my 10-year tournament celebrations, we had a little talk about setting up a massive table in my back garden and having an apocalypse game on a nice sunny day, not a rainy day. So who knows, because I must admit that tournament was so much fun, having everyone here at the house, and I could just imagine playing an apocalypse game with all of those guys and maybe others, or even different people, but I just think it'd be awesome. So I've actually got a bit excited about it. I would only play it as like a one-off probably. I don't know that I would play it every other weekend, but yeah, I'm a bit excited about playing a big game of Necrons. Yeah, why not? Great questions, thank you, Nicholas. Okay, next question is from Adam Edgar. He says, is the 3rd edition Necrons Codex your favourite codex for the fluff, or because it's your favourite edition to play? Do you still play 3rd edition? Okay, I don't play 3rd edition. I have been known to play 4th edition missions, although to be fair, the 8th edition missions now are quite fast. We've got a lot of them and they're all quite varied, so I don't tend to play 4th as much. But during 5th, 6th and 7th edition I had been playing 4th edition missions, and they were a lot of fun, but not the rules as such. No, I haven't gone back to 3rd edition. The reason why I like the 3rd edition Necron Codex the most isn't necessarily the rules, it's just because I grew up with it. It was my first ever codex. I had that codex, I was playing that codex for 10 years. That's a lot of time. I think those old codexes were a lot better. And if you've not seen that codex, I did make a video, which I'll link up in the description below, like a review of that 3rd edition codex and why I love it so much. So yeah, check that video out if you're interested. But no, it wasn't really the fluff, although my army still uses that old fluff, not the new fluff. But that wasn't the reason. I think it's just because it was my first love in the hobby. Okay, great question. Thank you very much. Okay, the big question. I have a question here from Gozer X, and he says, hey Nick, where did you get your Necron dice? And I'm really pleased that someone's asked me this in a Q&A, because this is now my most asked question, or most frequent comment on the channel. Since I've had these new Necron dice in my battle reports, I pretty much get 2 or 3 comments in every battle report. Where'd you get those dice? So I've actually got a copy and paste answer now, because I'm getting fed up with typing it. So here is the answer. So when Games Workshop did the release of Necrons, and despite pretty much every other faction getting specialised dice and the Necrons not getting specialised dice, there was quite a few unhappy Necron players in the Necron Facebook group, and we got together. I didn't instigate it, I just joined in, but basically a few people got together and did a very big custom Necron dice order, and because there were so many of us doing this order, the dice were really cheap. I think I got 80 dice and it cost me about £30, 25, £30, something like that. My only regret is I didn't order more dice, because I'd love to have more dice to be able to give away on the channel and things like that. So that's what I regret, actually, not having more dice. But I was a bit wary of them, because sometimes dice with patterns on are quite difficult to see. I've experienced that in the past, and I didn't want to get too many dice and then they're not very good. However, these dice were awesome, and I don't really have any trouble working out the numbers. So I'm very happy with them, and I do wish I'd got more. However, it was a one-off group order, so not a repeatable thing, sadly. So unless you find someone who did that order and then they're selling it, which I'd imagine if they would sell it for a lot more money, you're probably going to struggle to get them. So it was in the Necron Facebook group. Now when you search in Facebook for Necrons, there's quite a few Facebook groups. It's the one that's got about 9,000 members, so it's quite a big group. However, whilst you're searching there, I'm now an admin of another Necron Facebook group. We've named it Necrons The Awakening, and I'd highly recommend that you head on over to Facebook and find that group and join us on there. We're going to try and get a really good, solid Necron community on there, so we can talk tactics and army lists and post pictures of our painting and models, etc. Just like a normal Facebook group, except of course I'll be there, so check that out as well. Right, that's answered that question. I'm going to name the title, where did I get that Necron dice or something, so that everyone knows where I got it from. Okay, so the next question is from Hatework, and he says, do you think Necrons will ever see more characters for other dynasties? It seems like they want everyone playing Sotek. Is there a dynasty you would prefer a good character for, and what might its abilities be? Yes, I see this quite often, that we don't have many non-Sotek dynasty characters, and it's true. However, we do have like 12 characters, and we have 2 characters from Forge World, so we've got 14 characters. That's a lot of characters. It would be nice to have more dedicated ones to other dynasties. However, I think Sotek are like the main dynasty as such. You know, they're like the old school Necrons. That's pretty much what they were. And now they're Sotek, or at least that's how I see it. It would be nice to have a Novok character, something maybe like a Destroyer Lord, but better, like a named Destroyer Lord. That would be pretty cool. A Novok named Destroyer Lord. How would I kit him out? I'd kit him out with a Warsigh that ignores invulnerable saves, maybe does mortal wounds, just like a real cool Destroyer Lord. Be nice to have a new Destroyer Lord model. Whilst I love the old one, to have like a named character Destroyer Lord, not in Finecast GW, thank you. That would be awesome. So yeah, that's what I'm going to say. Thanks for the question, Hatework. Okay, next we have a question from Maseyferg, and they say, hey Nick, you mentioned Praetorians being a subpar unit. In my house meta, they are a great way to assault quickly. They become somewhat ignored when wraiths are on the table. My question is, what would you add to the Praetorians to make them a standalone unit without just reducing their cost? Thanks. That's a great question. I'm glad you're getting on with them. I've been thinking about this actually. Your question did make me think, and I've come to the conclusion that people would only play Praetorians more if they had a bit more of a guarantee of their job role, and their job role basically is assault. So I'm thinking what they need is a special rule where they can advance and assault, possibly re-roll an assault dice or +1 to their charge range as well. So I think that's what we need. I think we need a unit that we can say, right, Praetorians, they've got a close combat weapon, we can put them on the table and we can move, we can advance, we can assault, we can get into a unit first turn, almost guaranteed, and I think people will play them a lot more. So I think that would be one of the big rules I'd give them. I might also give them an invulnerable save from ranged attacks again, so that if you don't get first turn, maybe they could have a 4+, 5+ invulnerable save. Of course they don't have the dynasty keyword, but it would be nice if they could be a little bit more survivable if you don't get first turn. So that's why I'm thinking some form of extra save, and then I think the main thing would be to be able to advance and assault. Maybe in case you roll bad on your advance, you could get +1 to the charge or something, or a re-roll. And I think you'd see them on the table a lot more at their current points cost and with their current weapons. Okay, great question. Thank you for that one. Right, next up we've got a question from Artur Alexandre, and they say, I have a lot of Necron warriors with 25mm bases. Do you think that I have to change it to 32mm bases? Okay, I think most Necron players do have a lot of warriors on those old bases. I've got 60, and no, I don't think you'll have to change them. There is a possibility as the game evolves a bit more and the bigger bases become even more standard, that in a competitive environment that the tournament organisers might state things like that, you know, that those units have to be on the 32mm bases, but just gets those little baser things that go on, rather than actually cutting their feet, so remounting them. I'd just get one of those baser things. But we're talking about the competitive environment. You should have absolutely no trouble in any other environment of using those bases, rather than the bigger bases. You know, I mean, the rule is basically you have to use the base that the models come with or bigger, but you're not allowed to go smaller. So from the rules point of view, no, but I do foresee that maybe in the future that competitive environment, you might find, just to make the playing field even for everyone, they might bring in base size stipulations at some point. But no, I don't think you're going to have any issues at all. Okay, so that was the last question. Thank you everyone. If you've got a question for me, then pop it down in the comments box below. And in the meantime, if you want to see some of my battle reports featuring those Necron dice, then check out that playlist there, and I'll see you in the next video. Beam me up!